Clear Channel Television and 13WAM News are again offering all candidates for federal office free airtime so they can deliver their message directly to you, the voter. And today we hear from Bill Van Auken, who is running for a seat in the U.S. Senate under the Socialist Equality Party. Bill.
Well, thank you, Evan. I'm happy to be able to address this audience. And I think it's important to note that today, as we are taping this message, is the day of the debate here in Rochester between Hillary Clinton and her Republican challenger, a debate from which I and others have been excluded. No one has been told really why this exclusion is taking place and why the voters are being denied the right to hear all the candidates. We do know that the corporate sponsors refused to organize any debate at all, saying that the Democratic challenger in the primaries was not a serious candidate because he had not raised $500,000. Well, if lack of that kind of money is a crime, I too have to plead guilty. The truth is that these rules are undemocratic and they serve to exclude anyone who's not backed by the corporations. But it wasn't just me who was excluded. I would say that millions of New Yorkers were excluded from this debate. All those who oppose the war, who oppose the sweeping attacks on democratic rights, who want to see a halt to the growth of social inequality in this state and across the country. Some 25,000 New Yorkers signed petitions to put me on the ballot because they want a party that defends working class people. We received this support based on the demand for the immediate withdrawal of U.S. troops from Iraq and a socialist program to put an end to social inequality. What came through most clearly in the course of this campaign was the hatred felt towards this war by those who have suffered its consequences the most, that is working people. They know they're bearing the burden, the full burden, not only in terms of casualties, but declining living standards and the gutting of social programs as $2 billion is poured into this war every single week. We know now from a scientific study that some 600,000 Iraqis have been killed since the invasion. The U.S. death toll is now approaching 3,000, with 10 times that number of soldiers wounded. Hillary Clinton and the Democrats refused to oppose this war, even though a majority of the American people show they want an end to it and U.S. troops brought home. They criticized Bush merely for mismanaging the war, but they want it to continue. This is because the Democrats, like the Republicans, speak not for the people, but for the giant corporations and banks that want to use U.S. military power to further their global interests, including by conquering a small country and seizing control of its oil wealth. America is a republic founded in a struggle against colonialism, but they are trying to revive, these two parties, colonialism in Iraq. Now, war abroad has been combined with a war against working people at home. Politicians claim that society can't afford jobs, health care, decent education, a living wage for workers. The truth is, society can't afford the rich. The problem is, in this country, wealth is monopolized. We know that since 1972, the production of wealth in America has increased by 50%. Yet all of this goes to the top. The CEO today, the average CEO, makes 431 times the salary of an average worker. The SEP proposes measures to promote social equality, including the rollback of all the tax cuts for the rich, the ending of loopholes that allow big corporations to pay no taxes at all, and the cutting of taxes for average working people. We advocate an economic system based on meeting human needs, not on piling up profits for a few. We call for the present capitalist setup in which giant banks and giant corporations dictate conditions of life to millions and are privately owned, to be replaced by a system of public ownership, of democratic control of the economy. We're saying that establishing such social control over these corporations would free up resources to provide for affordable housing, for universal health care, for high-quality public education. My opponent, Clinton, of course, opposes such solutions. She herself recorded a personal income of $7 million last year, and she's the biggest recipient of funding from the Wall Street banks, the private health care lobby, and the drug monopolies. We stand for the defense of democratic rights against the biggest threats the American people have ever faced. Democrats like Clinton sat on their hands while Congress passed a law that legalizes torture, that allows the U.S. president to lock up anybody as an enemy combatant on his sole say-so. The most burning issue today is breaking the monopoly of the two parties of big business. This is the purpose of the SEP's election campaign. We are fighting to lay the foundation for the emergence of a mass socialist movement in this country dedicated to ending war and ending the capitalist system that creates it. I urge you to study the SEP's program, which can be found on the World Socialist website, wsws.org. If you want your vote to make a real difference on November 7th, I would ask you to vote for me, Bill Van Auken, Socialist Equality Party candidate for U.S. Senate. Thank you.
And thank you, Bill. Once again, we are offering free airtime for all federal candidates, and we're going to be right back with more with Bill. Okay. All right. You talk about folks who, you talk about the concentration of wealth in this country. And some folks might hear that and say, what's wrong with having a system in which if you work hard, you can make a lot of money and provide yourself a good life? They say, is Bill Van Auken trying to redistribute my wealth and give it to people who aren't working hard?
Well, I would say, first of all, that there are many people who work hard. Teachers in public schools work very, very hard. They're very badly paid. There are workers in factories, Delphi workers, work very hard on the assembly lines. They have their pay cut in half. Are they not working hard? Is the CEO who comes in and takes over a company and makes the decision to cut the workers' pay in half, to lay off workers, to take away their benefits, is this such hard work? And yet he is compensated no matter what happens to the company. The company can go bankrupt. We have CEOs taking away multi-million-dollar, hundreds of million dollars in severance pay for companies that have gone bankrupt, laid off everybody, destroyed workers' pensions. That's not such hard work. You
talk also about labor and protecting workers. I know that's a very central theme of your party and your platform. And some folks for years have said, well, that's the Democratic Party side. And obviously you're saying that's not so. What are some of the differences between what Ms. Clinton and the Democrats believe when it comes to labor and what you believe?
Well, I would say, first of all, Ms. Clinton has participated in an administration, her husband's. And if one goes back to the Clinton administration, now people, of course, and after 6 years of Bush, are beginning to look upon the Clinton administration as a golden era. It wasn't. They cut benefits. They cut wages. They established a law which declared the United States policy of regime change in Iraq, laying the basis for the Iraq War. We think this is not, and we can say, I referred to her campaign contributions. If they pay your bills, you are serving them. It's not a party of workers, it's a party of big business.
And when it comes to foreign policy, you talk about the importance of staying away from war. You talk about the importance of letting the people make their own decisions within these countries. So when it comes to North Korea and Iran, would you advocate simply standing back and allowing the people to have a revolution and replace those regimes on their own before any interventionist military policy?
Well, one has to ask. The United States is preaching to the world, you can't have nuclear weapons. Not the world, selected countries of the world. Meanwhile, we continue to build up a nuclear arsenal in this country. We allow Israel, India, Pakistan to accumulate bombs with no problem. How can you have such a double standard and expect anyone to abide by it? Meanwhile, of course, the United States supported a dictatorship in Iran for many years. It is not in a position. The working people in those countries themselves have to deal with regimes that take away their rights and in some cases threaten them with war.
But if those people don't feel powerful enough to make the regime change, how do they do it?
Well, I would say the lesson of Iraq is that you can't preach democracy with a gun, and you can't make effective change by means of military intervention. I say we have to build up an international workers' movement that's going to change the system worldwide.
Okay, lastly, Bill, you feel as more people you talk to, do you feel your message is at least getting out there, whether or not people agree with you, they understand the message better now?
Well, I welcome, as I said, this opportunity to speak on your channel because it is very difficult. They do attempt to exclude third-party candidates. But I think wherever we go, we find immense dissatisfaction with the Democratic and Republican parties that are usually reflected in staying away, the voting with their feet. People simply don't go to the polls. There is a hunger for a political alternative in this country, and we're seeking to provide it.
Bill Van Auken, candidate for Senate, thanks for coming by today.
I appreciate it.
We appreciate your time.